So today we're going to talk about elimination diet. And I'm Nyla Goldberg from Functional Endocrinology and physician and a health coach. And I created a 12-week program that's supposed to help people to feel much better. What it includes, it's technically a self-study at their own pace. We are going to learn about root causes for chronic conditions and how to overcome them and bring yourself to much more optimal health. We'll talk about what's functional medicine studies. We usually have this weekly Zoom calls, community support, and one-on-one visits. The root causes of inflammation are very similar to different conditions. Frequently, it starts with leaky guts that leads to problem assimilating nutrients and eliminating toxicity. Exposure to different toxicities have a big role, huge role in our chronic conditions, and therefore we'll be talking about that. The genetic backgrounds that affects how we eliminate toxicity, how we are sensitive to different foods, and so on, is very important, and therefore we are going to talk about that too. The stress and sleep are crucial. Very highly recommend to read the book called Why We Sleep. It's a wonderful book, illuminates a lot of pathways how we get sick if we choose not to sleep or if we cannot sleep for other reasons. Hormones, infections, and other things we're going to chat about as well, but we'll start with elimination diet. Elimination diet is technically when we remove major allergens and antigens or chemicals that are known to be pro-inflammatory. There are several different elimination diets, and the diets are not supposed to be continued for a long time. You're supposed to start with elimination diet, then you do a reintroduction, and then reevaluation of things that possibly still trigger you or don't trigger you. The FOADMAP diet, and we'll talk a little bit more about that diet, regular elimination diet where we remove gluten, dairy, corn, soy, peanuts, sugar, and alcohol. Some diets will remove coffee, citrus, and strawberries because those could be as well strong triggers. I like Whole30 diet, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Here we remove legumes and grains, and it's a Paleolithic type of diet. If we remove nitrates, plus everything before, that becomes AIP, autoimmune protocol diet. There are diets where Dr. Gundry's diets, for example, he removes lectins, so it's not necessarily the same as every other ones that I mentioned. There are people who have high histamine levels, and for them, histamine food elimination will be great. And the foods that have high histamines are frequently good foods. They are fermented foods, they are avocados and some others, and I'll show you on my chart. High oxalate food elimination. Oxalates can be pro-inflammatory because it can accumulate in the tissues and can trigger different inflammations and joint pains and so on. And oxalates are, again, in very good foods such as coffee, tea. They are in spinach, to some degree in kale, and many other ones. So, of course, depending on what your background, you may want to choose one or the other for elimination and see how you do with that. So, of course, if you know that you're sensitive to certain products, you want to remove them during the between 4 and 12 weeks of elimination. Usually during this time, the amount of antibodies, IgG or IgE, will reduce as you eliminate those triggers. And then you're supposed to reintroduce the products that you removed, and you want to reintroduce 5 to 7 days for each new group. You don't want to go and eat pizza that may have gluten and dairy and tomatoes and whatever, because that can trigger everything at once and people can be quite sick. Therefore, we want to reintroduce just group by group. Low FOADMAP diet, it's actually one of the most researched diet for irritable bowel syndrome. And what it stands for is fermentable oligo, D, and monosaccharides and oleols. So what are the examples? Those are fruits, many fructose found in fruits, honey and juices, lactose, it's obviously milk and milk products, sugar polyols like sorbitol and mannitol found in fruits and vegetables, and artificial sweeteners. Many artificial sweeteners will be sorbitol, mannitol, and some other tols. Ols are sugar alcohols usually. Fructans. Fructans are found in wheat, rye, onion, and garlic. And again, onion, garlic, great things, but unfortunately may not be tolerated by some subpopulation of people with irritable bowel syndrome. Galacto-oligosaccharides found in legumes, chickpeas, kidney beans, and baked beans. However, you could have totally fine, could be with green beans. So during elimination of FOADMAP, you still want to have a fiber, and the fiber examples will be quinoa, that is not a grain, it's a seed, and plus it has complete protein. 1 cup of quinoa has 12 grams of dietary fiber. Just to give you reference, we do suggest about 20 grams of fiber for women per day and 30 grams for men per day. So just having this 1 cup of cooked quinoa technically puts you at almost half of your daily requirements. So then brown rice, 1 cup is 3.5 grams. Cooked oats, 1/4 cup servings is 4 grams of fiber. Polenta, which is technically a corn, 1 cup is 7.5 grams of dietary fiber. Buckwheats, which is 1/8 cup of serving, is 2 grams of fiber. And flakes of corn, gluten-free, will be 4 grams of fiber. So fiber is important because it feeds the good bacteria in the guts, but if you have wrong bacteria in the guts, it can irritate it, but low FOADMAP fiber examples here should not do that. And the studies that I looked, there's several studies exampled here. They show that the sub-studies were just 2 days or 48 hours, and others were up to 6 weeks. A lot of them showed reduction of gastrointestinal symptoms and abdominal pain. IBS symptoms were reduced, less abdominal gas, less bloating, lower stool frequency, and so on. So as I said, this protocol, this FOADMAP diet has definitely been researched the most and appeared to be quite good, but it's unfortunately quite difficult to stick to. Again, as I mentioned, any elimination diets are supposed to be for a certain period of time, and then you're supposed to start reintroducing foods back. And we probably do forget that low FOADMAP diet is not for the rest of your life. It's just for a period of time to see what triggers you and remove those products, and then maybe work on your guts and be able, hopefully, to introduce more as time goes on. My personal favorite diet is Whole30. Whole30 diet eliminates sugar, alcohol, grains, dairy, legumes, food additives for 30 days. It focuses on whole food, pretty much non-processed or less processed food, because when we cook something, we do process food. So we cannot say that it's not processed food. It's just less processed. You do eat meat, fish, vegetables, fruits, eggs, and certain versions of vegetables you don't eat, such as corn. And obviously, we can consider corn as a vegetable or as a grain, but corn is excluded, as well as legumes and different grains. So there is no restriction in how much you can have, but you're supposed to have 3 meals and no snacking in between. And then you want to do slow reintroduction with what each food type one by one every 5 to 7 days. Many people suggest to add legumes first, then non-gluten grains, then dairy, then gluten-containing grains, and be aware of different symptoms: gastric, appearance of rashes, body aches, energy dips, insomnia, and whatever. So it's important to keep track of symptoms. And some delayed symptoms can appear on day 4 or 5, and that's why we recommend reintroduction every 4 or 5 days. Sorry, every 5 to 7 days, no less than that. I do like Terry Wall's protocol for multiple sclerosis, and Terry Wall's, she's actually a physician, and she unfortunately had multiple sclerosis to the point that she was bedridden. And she has wonderful TED Talk, which is called Minding Your Mitochondria. That's where I learned about her first time, and I looked into her protocol. There is a book about Terry Wall's protocol. There is a cookbook. And then I found this article where she took 67 patients, eventually kind of ended up being 21 patients who were for 12 weeks on individualized intervention with not medications, but with dietary and exercise and stress management. So they had this modified polyolithic diet that included 9 total cups of leafy green vegetables, sulfur-rich vegetables, and or deeply colored fruits and vegetables. And fruits usually is minimal, maybe like half cup of different berries. And dark berries are preferred, and low-carb berries are preferred there. So it's not all the fruits, it's just preferred berries rather than all kind of fruits. So those are technically your vegetable and fruits. Then there are encouraged foods that are plant and animal proteins, seaweed, non-dairy milks, and excluded foods will be gluten, dairy, and eggs. They did suggest supplementation with vitamin D, methylfolate, methylcobalamin based on blood levels. And so those 21 patients ended up completing the protocol. And there was results. There were results showing that high adherence to the modified polyolithic diet led to greater improvement in mood score, as well as significant improvement in memory, learning, attention, language, complex, verbal fluency, verbal and visual reasoning, but not cognitive processing and response speed. Still was it's very impressive to me. Fatigue improvement was significantly associated with mood, but not on all 4 mood measurements. And it's not unclear, is it less fatigue, improved mood, or improved mood led to less fatigue, but nonetheless, the patients, clients who participated in this study, they clearly felt much better after a year on the program. I anecdotally had patients who have multiple sclerosis and tried the diet, and they did say that when they were on a program, they all felt much better. However, when they stopped doing the programs, they got worse. So obviously, if their triggers were related to mood or stress or food, then when they stop doing the program, the condition starts progressing again. So the plain elimination, regular elimination diet, I would say, we have here just elimination of gluten. And you can see here there are some legumes, especially for people who are vegetarian. Legumes are allowed in a regular elimination food plan. There are dairy alternatives like kefir, coconut kefir, almond coconut flax milk, hemp or rice milk, yogurt, again, coconut cultured by yourself, nuts, seeds, and you can see that there are red dots, and the red dots will be around the foods that have high histamine. And cashews, sunflower seeds, walnuts, avocados, olives, eggplants, sauerkraut, mushrooms, salsa, spinach, pumpkins, tomato juice, mustard vinegars. Unfortunately, great products, but for people with high histamine may cause more reaction, more issues with hives. High histamine reaction could be as well diarrhea, and so on. So technically, needs to be individualized for certain people. The nightshades are your eggplants, tomatoes, peppers, and certain population with autoimmune conditions don't really feel good on those nightshades. So therefore, they may need to remove them. And I'm not sure if it's whole nightshade or like Dr. Gundry here suggests to remove seeds from nightshades. You could have tomato, but you have to remove the seeds. So I'm not sure what truly triggers the patients. Is it tomato, whole tomato? Is it juice of tomato, or is it actual seeds of tomato? But it's a good information to know. So again, who needs to have elimination diet? Is it everybody needs to be on elimination diet? Probably not. If you feel well and you don't have any symptoms, no fatigue, no grogginess, no brain fog, no achiness, no GI issues, gastrointestinal issues, you don't need any of this. You just can continue doing whatever you are doing. But if there are symptoms, especially if there are changes, then you may want to start making changes and starting to try to find what triggers your symptoms and do this elimination food plan, one of the elimination food plans, whichever one feels best for you. And 1 week before you start, focus on what you can eat. It's best to clean up your kitchen, finish all the things that not on the list of your plan. Start cutting down on coffee if you have to limit your coffee. Prepare menus. Think about maybe 1 week of eating, and so you have foods prepared in your head, and you maybe will start stacking your refrigerator with proper products so you can prepare those menus. And think about what snacks you may want to have, even though some of programs you're not supposed to have snacks, but it's good to have snacks and not find yourself in between meals hungry and not knowing what you're going to have. So it's smart to just prepare all of that. So when you go shopping, take your list, take your menu with you, then try to have community support. Community is super important. Do it with your friend, do it with your spouse, with your siblings, parents, kids, whatever works. I always suggest to fill out MSQ form, which is form that kind of helps you to understand where you are right now. Do you have headaches, dizziness? Do you have itchy eyes or ears, and so on and so forth? What's your energy from 1 to 10? And put the total. This will be your baseline, and after 12 weeks, you will be able to complete that again and see where you are. And if you complete this every 6 months, that's a great tracking system of your symptoms and can see what's changing.
Is that
Then,
form online somewhere?
I do have it. It was online. It was in our Get Healthy, but I have it at this point. I can provide it. So first week on a diet, on any kind of dietary changes, can make you feel off, especially first few days, because there are probably several reasons for that. One reason could be die-off reaction, that you had certain bacteria in your guts, you started feeding it with sugar, and that bacteria is starting to die. And whatever results of that die-off reaction could create the headaches and aches and pains. Usually it just lasts for a couple of days, and then you're supposed to get better. There could be another explanation for that. That's maybe if you are especially changing for lower carb meals, there's possibility that you are getting into mild ketosis and your food source of energy changes. And because of that, you may develop the same symptoms. So we don't know exactly what causes that. Is it die-off? Is it change of energy source? But this can happen. It's not a big deal. It will get better. Then, of course, you could have cravings for whatever your regular food was. So it's important to tough it up. Usually after 4 or 5 days, it passes and you don't crave much more of the food that's not on your plan. If you start program and you notice more bloating, then it's probably a good idea to change for low FOADMAP diet, because you probably have wrong bacteria in the wrong part of your guts, and we may need to think about small intestinal bacterial or fungal overgrowth and may need to be tested. And pay attention how you feel with nitrates, with high oxalate food, high histamine food, and want to decide if you want to remove those for the next 3 or 4 weeks of the program. And that's pretty much it for right now. Therefore, we're going to